and this is a little bit of a misconception that I see sometimes on social media about the Demon, that this isn't necessarily the best program for beginners.
Mm,
You should go find a prep course that has extensive lessons, a curriculum, and start with that, and then come to the Demon, because then you've got the
yeah.
foundation,
So
and
that then you can show up at the Demon, and the first thing we're gonna say is, okay, forget all that shit. Hello and welcome to episode 516 of the Thinking LSAT podcast. I'm Nathan Fox, one of the founders of LSATdemon.com and the LSAT Demon Daily podcast. Joining me today is our producer and a teacher with the Demon, Josh Mansfield. Josh, before we dive into the agenda, just a couple real quick announcements. This month's LSAT Demon free class is happening this afternoon. If you're listening to the podcast as it airs on Monday, July 21st, Ben's class is at 1 p.m. Eastern. Go to lsat.link/free to register to go do an LSAT class with Ben. Also, tomorrow, July 22nd, is the registration deadline for the September LSAT. If you're interested, if you think you're close to ready for the September LSAT, you better register by tomorrow, July 22nd. It's also the last minute to change your registration deadline if you're already registered for the September LSAT and you don't want to lose your money. You can kick that registration anytime in the future, any of their available dates for free. Josh, how would one decide whether they should register for the test or whether they should postpone their registration?
Do your practice test scores align very closely to a score that you would be happy applying to law schools with?
So what if I'm 15 points away?
Ain't gonna cut it. You're not
Okay,
gonna
what
make
if,
up. That's. I tell
yeah,
my students. I tell my students within 2 to 3 points of their score, and that's not like if you hit if your goal score is a 170 and you hit 167 once and you haven't scored above a 162 on the rest of them, you're a borderline. If you're scoring 167, 165, 168, 166, and your goal's a 170, then I would tell you you can go ahead and register.
practice tests aren't going to lie. Take your practice test seriously, but not too seriously. It's just a practice test. But don't give yourself extra time on the practice tests.
Right, right. Don't compare your untimed scores to
Do
your goal
real
score.
practice tests. And if you are within a few points of where you think you need to be, then sure, go ahead and register and take a shot at it. But if you're 10 or more points away, it's like, okay, that's just wishful thinking. And rather than sacrifice one of your 5 attempts and 220 whatever dollars it is these days, you can just don't register for this one, wait for the next one, or you can push your registration. Again, they'll allow you to change your test date for free, but only up until the registration deadline, which again, for the September test is tomorrow, July 22nd.
Nate, what do you say to students who say, "Well, I just want to go take one. I'm not at my goal score yet, but I want to take one so I can experience the official thing and knock the nerves out."
Yeah, I just don't think that's a good strategy. I mean, that's what batting practice is for. You don't step up to the plate with your shoes untied. Oh, I just want to see what it's like. Well, no, I'll tell you what it's like. It's like 95-mile-an-hour fastball. Can you hit it or not? So I just don't see the point. If you do timed practice tests, that experience is going to very closely replicate what you're going to experience on the day of the official test. So I find that people who say that, almost always, they haven't been doing real practice tests. If you do real practice tests, you'll realize pretty quickly, yeah, okay, I timed myself. I was honest with myself. I scored a 146. I want to be at a 166. Yeah, dude. Okay, so then you're not ready. And there's no value to it wasn't nerves that caused you to get that 146 on a practice test. It
Right.
was you're not reading carefully enough.
Well, and here's the other side to this that really frustrates me. Uh, I love that attitude. The whole let's knock a bit of rust off and like get the nerves out of the way. Do it when your practice test scores show that you have a shot at connecting with the ball, though.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, if you want to take one because you're expecting that one to not be as good because you're nervous. Well, one, you're setting yourself up for failure. But sure, plan to take September and October and November and January, right? Plan on
Well,
taking all 5, but don't sign up. But why would you take a swing when your scores indicate that you're not ready to do it?
yeah, and I think that that's a real a real key point about whether you should register or not. If you're gonna take the September test, then I expect you to also take October and
Mhm.
November. And people will be like, "Wait, but I don't I want to get my score back and see how I did and then determine whether I'm ready to?" No,
No.
the official test is just one data point,
Mhm.
and only the highest of your 5 allowed official attempts is going to count. It's crazy to waste those attempts when you're not really ready. If you're close enough though, if you're ready to commit, like, okay, I'm going all in. Yes, I'm within a few points. I think I'm going to take September. Okay, good. Then also plan on taking October, November, January, and whatever comes after that
Mhm.
so that you can treat the official test like it's just another practice test.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on from these announcements. We've got an email here from Renee. Renee is asking about logical reasoning mindset. She, oh, I guess she went from minus 15 in to perfect accuracy in 2 months of studying. Is that right?
That's right, Nate.
Damn. All right. Let's hear it.
All right. I thought I would drop in to share with you guys the mindset has helped me from going from scoring minus 15 in LR to having perfect accuracy in 2 months. It's kind of a combination of all the things I heard in the podcast with a little twist. Feel free to share if you think it would help others. The LSAT is a skills test, not a theory test. Think of it like math. You don't learn how to properly use equations by reading the math book, but by doing the practice problems in your homework. What do you do when you do get a question wrong in math? Figure out what went wrong with the formula you were using. In LSAT, that formula is your reasoning process. So just drill, drill, drill. And most importantly, review your wrong answers like your life depends on it. Because as I said, you're never going to learn how to do a math problem if you don't completely understand what's wrong with the formula you use. You will learn all the theory you need about every question type when you review your wrong answers.
Interesting. I'm not sure that math is the best analogy. I mean, like, boy, if I could think of an analogy that might scare off most of our students, it would be to, oh, it's like math. Don't worry about it. It's like math. Like 90% of the class just disappears. Close the Zoom. See ya. Unsubscribe. Um, hmm. I will agree to the extent that Renee is saying all you got to do is just practice and learn from your mistakes, right? There and I'll agree to the extent that there is a right answer and there
Hmm.
are 4 wrong answers. So you miss a question in math, you didn't do the math right. If you miss a question in logical reasoning, yeah, you didn't do the reading probably. Most likely what happened is you didn't read something accurately. But you also might have just failed on the logic bit of, you read it but you didn't think it through. You didn't think about what it means. You didn't think about what they're trying to conclude based on the evidence that they provided. You didn't think about the question that they were asking you. You didn't think about how the right answer is the only one that actually answers that question. There's so much work that can be done in reviewing. So don't study theory. It's just kind of ironic that she's mentioning formulas because don't memorize in math. You should memorize formulas, right? Like,
Right, right.
I mean, Uh, if you don't know a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then I'm sorry, you like suck at basic geometry. But with the LSAT, there aren't there aren't those like theorems and formulas and stuff to memorize. It's just read that shit carefully and actually understand what it's saying and focus on solving the questions, which is really similar to what we're doing in math, right? We're trying to solve a problem. LSAT, logical reasoning, and reading comprehension. You're trying to solve that problem where you feel really good about it and you also can see why the 4 wrong answers are wrong.
Minus the analogy that I think we both agree isn't the best analogy
Yeah.
that we've ever seen on the show. I like a lot of the reasoning in here. To your point, Nate, I used to tell people that I don't feel like that. The LSAT is different than the ACTs in that it's a subjective test, is what I used to say. This is when I first started out. Changing my attitude on that to saying no, there is a right answer, and I have to solve it was one of the biggest mindset shifts for me that I think Renee talks about a little bit here, that there is an objectively right answer and four
Yeah.
objectively wrong answers,
Yeah.
was a big deal in my LSAT journey. Another
Yeah.
thing that Renee hits on here, and something that I tell my tutoring students, and my philosophy's revised a little bit on this, we have, and this is a little bit of a misconception that I see sometimes on social media about the demon. I see on about the demon that this isn't necessarily the best program for beginners.
Mm.
You should go find a prep course that has extensive lessons and curriculum and start with that and then come to the demon, because then you've got the
Yeah,
foundation,
so
and
that
the
then
demon
you
can
can
teach you
show up at the demon, and the first thing we're gonna say is, "Okay, forget all that shit," because they're telling you all these gimmicky strategies about read the question first and skip certain question types and do a bunch of highlighting and underlining and do a bunch of diagramming and all this shit. Like, look, the LSAT demon is built for beginners. Intentionally, it's designed for beginners because we know that you guys are actually smart and we don't want to interfere with your natural ability by giving you a whole bunch of bullshit theory. So, sorry if I'm getting like agitated about this, but that myth of like the demon is not for beginners and you should go learn a bunch of, that's exactly what we don't want you to do. There's I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody who like scored a 160, then took one of the big legacy prep companies and came out of it scoring 155 because that 160, yeah, that's because you're a good reader, you're
Mhm.
capable of being careful, you're understanding what you're reading, you realize that the questions make sense if you take the time to make sense of them, and you just naturally solved enough of the questions to score a 160 right out of the gate. Then you learn all this bullshit theory and start scoring 155 because you're so confused about all this. Oh, I didn't realize that I should be doing the test in a different way than I naturally do it. No, we want you to do it in a natural way. All we're going to tell you to do is to slow down, be a little bit more careful. And to the extent that there is any theory that's required, the lessons are built right into the explanations.
Mhm.
So that's why we say literally to rank beginners, just hit drill. Hit drill. The demon gives you one question. You start learning from your mistakes. You watch videos, you read written explanations, you use the ask button if you need to, and you only study the stuff that you're actually having a hard time with because if you get it right, okay, cool. Demon gives you another one. Maybe it gives you a harder one. But if you get it wrong, then you take all the time you need to review. Demon drilling probably gives you a slightly easier one next to make sure that you're capable of solving about 75% of the questions that you attempt during your drilling. And over time, the demon just finds exactly what you need to be working on instead of everybody trying to micromanage it or, oh no, I can't get into that too quickly. I need to make sure that I go do a whole bunch of theory first. That's the irony, right? So
Mhm.
like on the one hand, people want to sign up for tests that they're clearly not ready for. And we're like, don't don't do that. Take practice tests until your practice tests indicate that you're actually ready to take the test. So people are so excited to like go ahead and sign up for the official test, which we say, hey, maybe pump the brakes on that. But then they're also super reluctant sometimes at the beginning of their prep to just dive in and start working on practice questions. Oh no, I can't do questions yet. I need to learn the theory of the test. There is no theory of the test. The theory of the test is it makes sense on the page. You just have to take the time to make sense of it.
Absolutely. And we have a lesson library that is there for
Sure.
your reference. But I see so often students who aren't doing questions and who are prioritizing that library, and they read on the word unless, for example.
Right.
But and they, in their head, they go, "Oh," and you know what, I'll give you the perfect example where it is, Nate. Uh, Understanding necessary versus sufficient conditions. Students
Yeah.
will go, they will read those lessons, and they'll say, "I get it. It makes sense." And then they go to the questions, and they can't identify them. They come out of nowhere, and they continue to miss the questions, even though they understand the idea behind sufficient versus necessary conditions. Now, is that something that you can work on and think about? Sure. but it is so much more helpful when it's done in the context of a question and questions and experience of just reading and practicing questions. And if you want to reference back to that lesson library, it's a great resource. But if you're doing it before you ever get to the questions, it's like learning to swing a golf club without ever going to the range and just
Yeah.
relying on YouTube. Like
The
you
whole
should be, go ahead.
just the whole like sufficient necessary thing, people get so in their head about it
Mhm.
because they read about it in theory. Then they start like seeing monsters under the bed. On every question, they're looking for sufficient and necessary conditions, and they just don't even really understand it. They don't even know what they're looking for. The major irony there is that I guarantee you already understand the difference between sufficient and necessary. If I were to tell you, if you're looking at a rose, you're looking at a flower, everybody knows that that doesn't mean that if you're looking at a flower, you're looking at a rose. Obviously, there's other flowers.
Mhm.
A kindergartner knows that. I'm not joking. Like like a
I
tiny
know.
kid will understand, "Oh no, what? No, there's other flowers." Yeah, no shit. Well, then you understand the difference between sufficient and necessary. But if we study the theory first, then people are all in their head about, well, if X, then Y. And so the contrapositive is if not Y, then not X. And then they start diagramming every logical reasoning question, which these big prep companies will actually teach you to do. And you're diagramming every logical reasoning question, and you end up with nonsensical results where you would actually end up diagramming, diligently, like you're doing your best. You're just doing what they told you to do, but you end up diagramming and you get to the end of all of your hieroglyphics and you look at it and it goes, "Oh, yeah, so if I'm looking at a flower, then I'm looking at a rose." Which you clearly did something wrong there, but it's easy
Mm.
to do something wrong when you abstract away and are just you're so caught up in the theory that you like lose track of common sense. So, I'll shut up, but I promise you that the demon is perfect for beginners, specifically because we don't confuse you with all of this theory. We get right into the practice, and then when you miss an actual question, that's when you learn whatever theory might have been required for that question. Anything
And
more for Renee?
I'll offer. I want to offer not for Renee. I want to offer one last thing with this beginner idea.
Great.
If if you don't believe us, our prep, we have free plans. Come study with us for free.
Yeah.
Come try for a month. Come try just reading a question and doing a question. Try it for a month. Because if we're wrong, if it doesn't work for you, then and you want to go learn how to diagram, then go ahead, right? You can go. But we don't ask for our commitments or just 1 month and that's it, right?
Yeah.
We don't need you to sign up for 6 months or a year worth
Yeah.
worth of course. And the other part, come start with the intuitive approach. Come start with the straightforward approach of that we trust that you're smart enough to read this and don't make us break bad habits. And if you don't and if it doesn't work, then you can go learn and you don't have any bad habits to break because all we told you to do was just read. And
No.
so give it a try and just see if we're right about this because it's a whole lot easier to start with somebody who hasn't learned a diagram yet because even if they're like, oh, okay, I quit diagramming, and they'll read it and they'll go, oh, so x equals y but
Yeah, fall back
not
into
z,
those
and they're
bad
like
habits. That's
doing
true.
it in their head. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
so
All right. Thank
that's
you,
my
Renee,
last thing.
for
Yeah.
writing in.
Next thing on the agenda, we're going back to the candidate referral service, Nate.
Okay.
A few weeks ago, you and Ben speculated that it might be time to change the advice that students sign up for the candidate referral service.
Right. I was
For
worried about
those,
that.
yeah, for those who aren't familiar or who haven't listened to that episode, candidate referral service is what you check when you are signing up to take the LSAT and for the credentialing assembly service that allows schools to access your information and to send you essentially unsolicited marketing materials.
Yeah, they
Uh,
get to spam you.
Right, right. And we had one student on that you talked about on the show that described being invited to a pre-application, so had not applied yet, interview at Wash U
Hmm.
that you and Ben said there's nothing good that comes from this interview. Don't do this.
Yeah,
And so it kind of prompted this, what do people think?
it did. And the demon team responded enthusiastically in favor of
Yes.
checking that box. Now, this is a very savvy group of people, right? They've
Right.
listened to us and they know the game and they're familiar with the scholarship estimator and they're familiar with the 509 reports and they understand the law school pricing game. And so they're less likely to get sucked into some scam. But anyway, Demon team member David said, my friend applied last cycle and, per your advice, signed up for the credential assembly service. No, sorry, not credential assembly service, the candidate referral service.
Yes.
Candidate referral service. You check a box saying, oh, yeah, sure. Release all my information to all the law schools and they can just spam me with shit about their school. David's friend had many law schools that reached out to him and offered application fee waivers as well as credential assembly service waivers. So that's that $45 or maybe now it's 48 or 53. I don't know. It keeps going up. LSAC charges everybody a fee for every school you apply to. That's separate from the application fee
that the schools charge you.
So David's friend was getting not only application fee waivers, like, don't worry about the 75 or $100 that it costs to apply to our school, but they're giving credential assembly service waivers, which means that they're actually paying LSAC on your behalf. And they did that due to David's friend's high LSAT. David said there were many schools in the T14 and T25 that reached out, along with some not so great ones. David continues, I know you can just reach out to schools and ask for a waiver yourself, but it takes a bit of workload off the student when the schools reach out. With application fees being so high, I think this is a very notable advantage to registering for the service. You want to read what Matt said?
Yep. Matt extends on this, says I got a bunch of fee waivers and just hit submit on places I wasn't even super interested in, but were competitive with the places I was. All it cost me was a few minutes of time that led to a few full rides that I used for negotiating.
Savvy.
It's very savvy.
Demon team member Robert said, I agree with everyone else, but to the point raised on the podcast, students need a better understanding of the game and take responsibility, specifically how to distinguish benefits like fee waivers and genuine opportunities from empty marketing tactics. Be a more savvy applicant. And the best way to be a more savvy applicant is to go to lsatdemon.com/scholarships. That's a visualization of the publicly available American Bar Association 509 reports, where we can take just your LSAT and your GPA and we can project what kinds of scholarships you might have gotten last cycle. Okay, so it's not a predictor. People use it for predictions, but what we're really doing is we're saying, well, people with your numbers last cycle got these kinds of offers. And you can start there. You can also, from there, click into any school to see the 509 reports themselves, which this is all publicly available, but we've got them organized in one place for you. You could look at the 509s so you can see exactly like, okay, what's their median scholarship offer? What's their 75th percentile scholarship offer? How many full rides do they give? How many more than full rides do they give? And when you become a more savvy applicant, like Robert is suggesting, you start to see, oh, wow, okay, so hardly anybody pays full price. Everybody gets charged a different price. If a school's reaching out to me about a pre-application interview, well, what's that? What good is that? Because like, give me I'm not going to hear the price until I apply. So how about you give me an application fee waiver? Even better than that, you waive the credential assembly service fee so that I can apply to your school for free, so that you can then decide whether you want to admit me and then tell me what the price is going to be, because nobody pays full price. Very few people pay full price, and you don't get to find out the price until after you've applied. So if you're a savvy applicant, we do want you to use the candidate referral service. Just be careful. The sales sharks are going to start circling. And you got to be really careful when they start trying to get you into their special program, or, oh, yeah, don't bother retaking the LSAT. No, just go ahead and apply right now. That serves only them and not you. and they are going to give you a lot of advice that doesn't serve your interests.
They're also going to highlight things that are not materially important to your law school decision. They're
Such
going to
as,
highlight their new library. They're gonna they're gonna highlight all of their clinics and co-curricular activities that they have that every other law school in the country has. They're gonna highlight the ranking of their trial team. They're gonna highlight their ranking in employment law or in environmental law,
space law. Yeah,
space law,
totally.
right? um, that information is not helpful. Those are marketing and sales gimmicks. When you are looking at what you want to, like the factors that you should be basing your decisions on, the cost that it's going to, that it will be to go there, the price it'll be for you to go to
Yep.
that school. Are you interested in working in that market? What are the employment outcomes like? And do they align with the kind of work that you want to do? I mean, those three should outweigh everything. I mean, unless like you need an online program, but other than that, I don't know of anything else
Yeah.
really. I mean, if all things are the same, then I guess you can make a decision based on something else. But if you're making choices based on, who's number one in environmental law, according to, because those US News rankings, we've looked, those US News rankings are polls that they ask other professors to rate faculty at those
Yeah.
schools.
Well, they also have 100 different
Oh
categories,
my
right?
gosh. Yeah.
So everybody ranks in the top 11 in something.
You picked
So the
11.
school's like, oh yeah, we're 11th in we're 11th in entertainment law. Like, okay, great. So that's your highest ranking out of any of these rankings, and they did 100 different rankings. You're just cherry picking the data there. It's just a bunch of cheesy bullshit. Apply broadly, pay attention to the price you're going to have to pay and the employment outcomes from that school. Next one on the agenda is from Jacob. Jacob offers The Tale of Two Careers.
Hi, guys. I'm a young professional who is currently considering law school. I'm currently a CPA and a second year associate at a Big Four public accounting firm. However, I've always been interested in law since a young age. The
Hmm.
past few years, this this interest has been reignited due to a great tax professor of mine, an ambitious JD LLM CPA, as well as my childhood best friend going through law school admissions process. This has been further reinforced by a cold diagnostic of 153 and a practice test of 162. It seems like I may have potential. I love my current career and could see my future in it. However, law school has always been humming in the back of my mind. So, what do I do, or how do I reach more clarity on this huge and pricey decision? Is it a simple binary choice, or are there synergies I could achieve as a lawyer with my CPA background that appeals to both interests? Any guidance is appreciated. Best, Jacob.
I mean, you would know best, Jacob. You know the world of accounting. Is there anyone else in accounting? You do have this tax professor
Mhm.
who, but I mean, that's a professor.
Right. Did he work as a CPA with a JD?
Yeah. Do you want to be a tax professor? Like, what do you want to do? Now, if you want to be a tax attorney, I have no doubt that somebody with a CPA and Big Four public accounting experience, and you want to go get a JD so that you can specifically be a tax attorney, yeah, I mean, you could probably go bill $2,500 an hour or something as a tax attorney. Like, the sky's the limit. That's a very lucrative subset of law. But is that what you want to do? Do you want to go to tax court and fight tax cases? Do you know practicing tax attorneys? Your assignment, Jacob, is to go meet tax attorneys. Go meet attorneys who are CPAs or who have the CPA chops.
Mhm.
Go meet those people. And I'm all in favor. If if Jacob had led off with, I'm a CPA and I want to become a tax attorney, I would have been like, slam dunk. But notice that's not what Jacob is saying.
Yeah.
Instead, Jacob is saying something that I really don't like, which is, oh, I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was a little kid. Yeah, yeah. Who gives a shit? Like, that's not, little kids don't know what lawyers do. So I'm not ever impressed by that. I also am concerned, Jacob, you have a very solid career. You're killing it in your existing career. So this is going to be a huge expense. I mean, it's not just the tuition, it's the time,
Even if he
and
goes for
it's
free.
yeah, and it's the opportunity cost of
Yes.
your how much are you making at a big four public accounting firm, and how much are you going to make next year, and how much are you going to make the year after that? Probably bonuses, stock incentives, and all kinds of things. You're you're just walking away from a lot to get into something uncertain. So again, to the extent that you're going to actually leverage your CPA and you're going to go practice areas of law that normal lawyers can't, great. But first, like meet tax attorneys and figure out that this is the thing you actually want to do. The fact that you've got a 153 cold diagnostic, yeah, that's good. The fact that you recently got up into the 160s, good. Like, I have no doubt in your potential. You can probably end up in the 170s, and you can probably get a scholarship. You could probably go to law school for free, but
Mhm.
that doesn't mean you should. That's like necessary, not sufficient. I mean, like having the aptitude, having aptitude is necessary. If you don't have aptitude, then go do something else. You've got the aptitude, but you still could go do something else, including the career that you already have.
Yeah. And to your point, like, what kind of firms are those attorneys working at? Do you enjoy that sort of structure in terms of how the work goes? My brother's an accountant. I don't know if he's at a big four, but he's in one of those kind of big public accounting firms as well. And I know he works just obscene hours from January to April. And then once April's over, once you hit May, like he can work from anywhere. It slows down. Life's pretty good. He makes good money. Like he loves it. And so, what does the life of a tax attorney look like and how does that compare to your current job? What does the salary look like and how does it compare? And I just like you said, Nate, I have a hard time. Here's what I'll say. Law is always there. If in 20 years you now are no longer satisfied with your big four public accounting firm that you're a partner or whatever that structure is, and you want to go back to law school and then combine the experience, sure, like your resume looks all the better. But if you love what you're doing right now, why would you give that up for something that it doesn't seem like he knows? And even if he talks to a couple tax attorneys and goes, oh, yeah, that sounds interesting, like you're walking away from something that you love. So I don't see a compelling reason to do this right now, at least. And maybe in the future you could, but
But go meet
yes,
tax lawyers. I mean,
yeah,
it is possible that you can launch yourself from Ernst and Young or wherever you are now to it is possible that the JD is going to allow you to do shit that these other associates that you work with just can't. And it is definitely possible that it's going to 5x or 10x your billing rate because there's a lot of people that can do accounting who can't do law. There's also a lot
mhm,
of people who can do law who can't do accounting. And
yeah,
so it's possible that if you could do both, if you've actually got an interest in accounting, that's step one for this type of thing. It's like you've got to actually like doing accounting. If you like doing accounting, I could see tax law being super lucrative, but I don't know any tax attorneys. And you are the one, Jacob, who needs to go meet tax attorneys. So, network, you're already in a perfect spot. I'm
mhm,
sure there's plenty of people that you could go talk to who could introduce you to the right people that you could talk to. But, you know, where'd you go to law school? Do you like your job as a tax attorney? How much do you work? What's the schedule look like? How stressful is it? Figure out how much money these people make, and then you can do the math on whether it's going to be a positive ROI or not, because the opportunity cost is real,
mhm.
you know. So only you really, Jacob, can figure out whether it's worth it for you. But the fact that you've always, since you were a child, wanted to be a lawyer is the world's worst reason.
Oh,
And also your childhood best
I was
friend.
about to say the second worst reason is that you've got FOMO because your best friend is doing it.
And even the cold diagnostic of 153. I mean, that's a fine cold diagnostic, but that's not like, oh, holy shit, wow, that's incredible. It's not like you
Yeah,
have
you didn't just
it's not
score a
like you
180 on your practice test.
right. You're not like some unicorn of talent for the LSAT, you're fine, you're good, you're gonna be fine, you're gonna learn, you're gonna progress. Yeah, like I said, you're gonna score in the 170s. But I scored in the 170s, and I had no business being in law school because I didn't really know what lawyers did, and I didn't want to do that work. So it's back on you, Jacob. Ball's in your court to go meet lawyers. And boy, I'd actually love to hear from you if you go meet lawyers and you decide, yes, I do, or no, I don't. Um, Reach out to us at thinkinglsat.com and let us know, whether you did or did not decide to pursue this further.
Yeah. Thanks for writing in, Jacob.
Okay, so here's just a quick announcement. LSAT Demon is supporting a short documentary that is investigating how the rising cost of law school and inequitable scholarship practices place a disproportionate burden on students from underrepresented backgrounds. So we are in touch with a filmmaker who is seeking to speak with women, students of color, and those from rural or under-resourced communities to illuminate these systemic barriers and advocate for a more equitable path to legal education, something that we talk about on the Thinking LSAT podcast all the time. If you or someone you know, and that can include recent law graduates or lawyers or people who are paying back student debt, if you might know anyone who has a happy story or a sad story that you would like to share, and you want to be part of hopefully making change in this industry, just reach out with a brief note about yourself and where you're located and email help@lsatdemon.com, and we will connect you to this filmmaker who is, like I said, making this short documentary.
Awesome.
Next on the agenda, Alex writes in about studying with a buddy.
Hey, Demon Team. I was wondering how you think I should approach studying with a buddy. I've never in my academic career studied with another person and wanted to know exactly how that would work. Would we both drill the same questions and then review our wrong answers together and help explaining the correct answers to one another? Or should we drill different problem sets and then go over one another's wrong answers? Or should we not even drill at all and go over lessons together? Thanks for all the free guidance you give. We both listen to this podcast and love the content.
No, do the same questions.
Yep.
Here's what I recommend. Either do a section as homework, then meet to review it, or meet, do the same section simultaneously, and then review it. You could also do a full test, but a full test, that's 2.5 hours worth of homework.
Yeah.
And then it's a hell of a lot of review because one or both of you are going to have missed, a third or a half of the questions on the test. That's a lot of review to work on. So I would just say one section at a time, but definitely each do your best on that section. Then, yeah, whichever one or both of you missed, review those questions together, try to explain them to each other, right? If you got it right and your buddy got it wrong, you're both going to learn from you trying to explain it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And you might learn more than they do, actually, because you've got some inkling of why it's right. But it's also possible that you kind of narrowed it down to a 50-50 and chose right at the last minute. And so then the two of you talking it out, you're going to learn a ton from the teaching part. It doesn't need to be somebody who's at your same level. My study buddy, when I was prepping, was in like the 130s and I was in like the 170s. And I'm pretty sure that I gained more from our study buddy relationship than she did because, she missed so many questions and I got a lot of questions right. And I was having to just question after question after question. I was having to go through and really kind of formalize my process, telling her exactly why her answers were wrong and telling her exactly why my answer made sense in the context of the question. I see no value to you two doing two different.
Nope. Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do different questions. And also going over lessons, don't do that either. Because as we were talking about at the top of the show, you just really don't need to study theory until you have missed an LSAT question that introduces you to the theory. or to the need for the
Right.
theory, which you
Right.
would find in the explanations.
Right.
But yeah, that's going to happen anyway. When because if you're both demon students, you do the same section in the demon, you sit down and review that section. Now you've got the demon's written explanations and videos. And if you're both still confused, you can hit the ask button and then you can review the results that the ask button team comes back with. So I love a study buddy. I mean, I think you can get like 65% of the value that you would be able to get from a paid private tutor for free from a study buddy.
For those who say, well, I don't really have somebody to study with, I've got two pieces of advice for you. The first is your study buddy doesn't even need to be somebody studying for the LSAT. I used to teach my wife logical reasoning questions. Now you got to find somebody who really, really loves you and is willing to tolerate this. If it's a roommate, you better be buying him a coffee in exchange for it. This
Or,
this
do the
is
dishes for a month.
exactly, exactly. I did a lot of diaper changes in exchange for LSAT questions.
That's funny.
But when you're doing it, especially with somebody who is not studying for the LSAT, I would say something like, "Oh, well, that's a causation correlation flaw." And my wife would go, "What are you talking about? That doesn't make it. I don't know what you're talking about." And I had to stop and say, "Well, this is what's proven. This is this is the extent of what I know. Causation, the idea that this caused this other one isn't proven. Here are examples of what it could look like where there is still correlation but not causation." And the ability to articulate that made me better at this test than anything else that I did,
Oh,
without a doubt in my
totally.
mind. And
Yeah.
so I wouldn't say that's, all your studying, but if once a week you tried to do that, you'll be amazed at how you can't just rely on the
Yeah.
little shortcuts, and you
Yeah.
actually have to reason through
Yeah.
why you see things.
This has proven true via our LSAT Demon Ask Button Heroes program.
Mhm.
For people who score 170 or higher on timed practice tests in the Demon, if you're still studying, you can volunteer for us where you give us, I think it's 4 hours a week
4
of
hours a
your
week.
time in exchange for a free LSAT Demon Live subscription. And during that 4 hours a week, you respond to students' ask button requests. And I think we've hired like permit, like as paid folks.
Mhm.
I think we've hired a dozen or more of those ask heroes because they were already in a good spot. I'm scoring 172 on my practice tests. Great. Now spend some time responding to random student questions about random LSAT questions. Articulate your process, think it through, maybe look at our written explanation, look at previous ask button responses, and then send, where you're actually teaching it to somebody. Next thing you know, you're scoring 178 or 180, and we're hiring you as a demon teacher.
That's advice number 1, pairing that with and go apply it. We'll make sure to include the link here in
Yeah,
the
it's
show
LSAT
notes.
demon. Sorry, it's lsat.link/apply if you're
Okay, that's what I
interested
thought
in
it was. I'll
applying.
have
And
that in the
that's
show
also,
notes.
you can apply for all our paid jobs there too.
Right.
lsat.link/apply.
Second piece of advice, go join our Discord. All that is
Yeah.
required in order to join our Discord is a free account. And if you are signing up for the free class that's happening this afternoon, you also can go into our Discord and join the AMA with Kaylee from 12 to 7 p.m. Eastern. That is, again, all that requires is a free account. So if you make an LSAT Demon free account, you can come and join these, do these AMAs. But we have an entire channel for finding a study buddy, and you can say, "Hey, I'm scoring in the 160s. I'd love to work with a student who's struggling to break out of the 140s," and look for a student that you want to teach essentially and be working with. If you want somebody who's matching your level, hey, I'm looking for somebody who's scoring in the 160s with me, or I want someone who's scoring a little bit higher than me if you're willing, because there's some things I don't know if I'm getting, and I'd love to work with somebody.
Yeah.
Go find a student whose time works out with yours, whose levels where you want it to be. I think that Discord has over 5,000 members. Like, I promise you, there are study groups always being formed that you can go join. And so if you are struggling to find somebody to study with consistently, go join the Discord.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks for writing in, Alex. Next up, Alexa writes in, studying for 1 hour a day.
Sounds great. Alexa says, "Hello, Demon Team. I study during my hour lunch break at work since I have heard that just 1 hour a day is the optimal study schedule to avoid burnout. But I feel that the time goes by quickly and I only get to review a couple of questions since I'm taking my time to fully make sure I understand the material and mistakes I made." I mean, that all sounds great, honestly. If you reviewed one mistake, like if you if you fix one mistake a day, there aren't going to be very many mistakes for very long. I mean, because those mistakes are going to repeat themselves if you don't fix them. And I can promise you that at least half of those mistakes are just you misread it. And so when you dig in and you actually review those mistakes, half of the time you're going to be like, "God damn it. If I had just read it better, I wouldn't have made that mistake." Yeah, I know. It might
Yeah.
take you a dozen times to learn that mistake, but it shouldn't take you 50 times to learn that mistake. You should eventually figure it out like, "Oh, wow, I got to take this more seriously. I got to slow down." And once you do that, your score just skyrockets, even if, again, even if you're only fixing one mistake a day. So this sounds fine. I do want to push back a little bit about optimal. I'm not sure that 1 hour a day is the optimal study schedule, but I am confident that if you do one high quality hour every day, you will be making forward progress. So I see it more as like the minimum price of admission. If you give me one high quality hour a day, most days, you're going to make forward progress. I'm sure of it.
And to your point, Nate, I studied 1 hour a day outside of classes that I would listen to. That I would literally put on. I drove a lot for my job, so I would just
Yep.
listen to classes while I was driving in the car.
Yep.
So outside of that, and then the podcast while I was golfing, I would do 1 hour of questions every day, and that was it. That was all I had time for. I had a
Yeah.
newborn, I had a job. I just didn't
Yeah.
have time for more than the hour, and that was all that I needed because I never missed an hour, and that hour was always top quality.
Yeah.
Uh, let's keep going because I think there's
Okay.
a
I'll read
recommendation. Yeah,
Alexa's email further. She says, "On the weekends, I study at home for about 5 to 6 hours and feel more productive than during my lunch break where there are more distractions."
that's my problem.
Yeah. "I have an hour commute to and from work, and my schedule is 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, so I don't have the energy after work to study. During the mornings before work is when I work out. Is this still an effective form of studying, or is there an ideal amount of questions we should be getting through a day for optimal performance?" Nah, you're definitely thinking about it wrong there, Alexa. "Would cutting that hour of studying during the week and studying all day on weekends suffice for improvement? No.
Please don't do that.
Or should I add more studying during the week and lose sleep? No."
Okay, so I okay. I want to start with the idea this hour has to be quality.
Yeah.
And if there are distractions at work, if someone's walking into the break room and is chatting with you, that's not an hour, right? That doesn't count. It's good study, but it's not the kind of hour that we're talking about. It needs to be at the same level of focus, the same level of commitment that you would be as if you were taking the official test. That's the level that I tell my students that that hour needs to be
Yeah.
at.
Book yourself a conference room and, probably you have a 1 hour lunch break, so you're not going to get a full 1 hour of studying. But book yourself a conference room and quickly eat your lunch and then study seriously for 30 minutes. But otherwise, like, I'm not talking about 1 hour of half ass studying. I'm talking about full ass. Like, I need you to be serious about it.
Right.
So, maybe you don't have the kind of work environment where you can actually find yourself a quiet space. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
But the answer is not to like, I do think that before work, I don't want you to shortchange the idea that you could study before work. Alexa just says, Oh, before work, that's when I work out. Yeah, okay. But maybe that needs to be your LSAT workout. And maybe you could do your physical workout. Maybe you go for a fast walk at lunch or you work out after work
Right.
because I know that's not optimal. I know that's not what you want to do. But if you want to make efficient LSAT progress, it needs to be kind of your best hour a day.
Yep.
So, one high quality hour before work, man, I know you're going to make progress. One shitty hour at your lunch break, probably not. An hour after work where you're tired, probably not. And the answer is not don't study at all during the weekdays, but study
Oh,
8 hours a day on the weekends. That's definitely not the answer.
and I hear this from students all the time. Oh, well, I work out in the morning. Oh, well, I can't do that. And it's like, you are going to get the kind of results that mirror the priority that this test is to you.
Mm hmm. Mm
If this
hmm.
test is third in your life behind workout and your job, then it is going to fall, or behind your workout and your sleep or whatever, that then you're going to get, third tier results.
Yeah.
If this test and the idea of going to law school is something that you're serious about, then you rearrange your life to
Yeah.
ensure that your best hour every day is
Yep.
coming for the LSAT. And
Sleep is important.
yes,
I mean, I don't want I do not want people to be deprioritizing sleep because your brain literally just won't work properly or it won't work at full capacity if you're not getting adequate sleep. So I
yes,
don't want you to shortchange sleep, but I do want to say, man, fuck your job. Like because you're not staying in that job. You're trying to go to law school. That you're not going to stay at that. I don't think you're going to stay at that same job. So, what about going part time at work? What about telling your work, listen, I need from noon to 1 p.m. solidly every day. Like, I'll be here at 9 a.m. I'll stay till 6 p.m. Oh, you need me to show up at 8:30? You need me to leave at 6:30? I'll do that.
sure.
But I need this time for myself to study for the LSAT. And if they won't let you do that, you got to seriously think about what you're actually getting for what you're giving because you've got an hour commute each way. So you're giving these people 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. God damn it, you're giving them that's a lot of life that you're giving these people. And if they're not willing to work with you, to be flexible, to allow you to have a high quality hour of LSAT prep every day, boy, Starbucks exists, you know? Like I feel like there's better things you potentially could do that would be more flexible that would allow you, probably like you could if you quit this job and became a barista in your neighborhood, you're saving yourself, you know, 11 hours a day that you're out of the house. And go be a barista for 6 hours a day. Okay, make a little bit less money, but have so much more time and flexibility to actually prioritize the LSAT study? I don't know.
Yeah.
And what
And
other advice would you have for Alexa?
and if that's not feasible, right? Then that, like, whatever it just has to be a quality hour. And
Yeah.
I get working out's important, but to your point, Nate, the time when you are not mentally fresh is when you should be
Mhm.
working out. So if you're burnt out after
Mhm.
the day and not mentally fresh, that's when you should go to the
Yeah,
gym.
totally. You're giving your workout your best mental energy.
Exactly. That needs to stop. And here's the last thing that I just, it says, should I lose sleep? And my question is, what else is there after 7 p.m.? Because,
Yeah.
right, if you're not, unless you're going to bed at 7:30 or 8 o'clock after dinner, I don't understand where this time is going. And so what I'm saying would be is, uh, you know, how often are you on your phone, right? What's I have students who come to me and they say, you know what, Josh, I decided it was time for me to take it seriously. I uninstalled all my social media,
Yeah.
right? What are you? what else is there? If job has to if job has to be there, right? If job is 9 to 6, that's what it, or 7 to 8 to 7, that's what it is. Fine.
Hmm.
But after you put the job in there, what's the next hour you should write down should be your LSAT.
Yeah. And I would just do it. I would do it earlier in the day. I mean,
Mhm.
your job's going to kick the shit out of you. So, like, why can't you show up an hour early for work and study from 8 to 9? Oh, workout is so important in the morning. Great. Get up an hour earlier. I can't tell you how many students have told me the best thing I ever did in my LSAT prep was I started getting up an hour earlier.
That's when I
So,
studied.
whatever time you're already, okay, you're getting up at 5 already. All right, well, fine. Get up at 4.
Yep.
But I'm not telling you to lose sleep. I'm telling you to get up at 4, go do your workout, do your LSAT prep or do your commute, then do your LSAT prep, and then be ready to go at work at 9 a.m. But,
And then go to bed an hour earlier.
and go to bed. Yeah. Get home at 7 p.m., eat dinner, go to bed at 8,
Yep.
get up at 4. And it is, I agree, Josh, that priority matters a lot here. And law is for people who are going to take this shit seriously. It's just not something that anybody should do casually.
Yeah.
So I guess you're going to learn an important lesson here, Alexa, which is how much priority this type of shit is going to have to take in your life. I mean, presumably, if you're going to go off to law school, you're going to actually quit your job so that you can make your legal studies your entire life. If you're capable of doing that, then it seems like you should be capable of finding 1 hour a day, high quality 1 hour a day in your life now.
It's funny, Nate. I was sitting down to book my schedule out for law school
Yep.
coming up in the fall, and I went and pulled up my law school's library hours,
Yep.
and they don't open until 7 a.m. And I was
Okay.
so mad because I was like, what am like? So I have to study at
Yeah.
home for my first 2 hours. Like that's, and I was just so mad that that time was not open. And it's because to me, I think about when I'm best and I want to be working on the hardest things that I have that day or the most important things that I have that day when I'm feeling the best.
Earlier
And
in the day. Yeah.
that's for me, that's earlier. And if it is even in the evening for you, then so be it. But you say that it isn't. So you need to be prioritizing this test.
Yeah. What's
Okay.
next on our agenda? Oh, it's Practice Page. Practice Page. She's asking about or telling us about full practice test fails.
Hello, I wanted to start off by saying how much I love the Demon. I started with 157 diagnostic last August and started to see significant improvement when I started with the Demon last December. As I continued studying for the August exam, I feel like I'm hitting a roadblock, specifically in logical reasoning. In individual time sections, I typically miss 1 to 3 questions. However, during full timed practice tests, I start missing 7 to 8.
What?
I suspect this drop in performance is mostly due to mental factors. I might be placing more pressure on myself during full tests than I do during individual sections. I tend to focus on drilling and time sections with an emphasis on review, but I still want to incorporate a few full-length practice tests into my study schedule. Do you have any advice on how to better translate my time section performance to full practice tests? Thanks for all you do.
I wish I knew how often Paige was doing full length tests.
That's what I want to know too.
If you're doing a full length test every week, that's probably too many. If you're doing more than one full test a week, you're definitely doing too many. There is no reason why. If you do an individual time section and you typically miss 1 to 3 questions, then that means you pretty much understand what's going on.
7 to 8
Seven
with
to eight means
yeah.
you're understanding like less than half, because I do feel like, double the amount that you missed, and that's the number that you didn't understand. So if you miss 7 or 8, that means you didn't understand 14 to 16 questions, which is solidly more than half the section. So I don't know what you're doing when you do your full time tests, but you're losing your mind. And you clearly get it when you're doing your timed sections. So treat your full tests like they're just a few timed sections in a row.
You have to not think about the score that's at the end.
Yeah.
Every time, every time you think about something other than the problem in front of you,
Yeah.
that is focus that's away. that is having to and it's oftentimes I find for me personally, when I was practicing and I would think about the score, I would think about how well I was doing, I was thinking about how poorly I was doing. As soon as I did that, it required a conscientious effort for me to stop and say, no, stop, what's in front of me, read it carefully, understand it, back on the test, right? And if you are not that intentional when you are thinking, when those thoughts come into your head, when those distractions come into your head during practice tests, then you're probably missing those questions. Practice tests are not about the score that you receive at the end. They are about mimicking the exact same thing that you do on time sections, which are about mimicking the exact same thing you do on drilling, so that you can treat the official test just like you're drilling, which
Yeah.
is one question at a time. Here's the other piece of advice I'd give to Paige. Um, had a student. She was diagnostic somewhere similar to Paige, 150s. She'd studied with Demon for 9 months. Did tutoring with me for several months. Did not break out of the 150s after 9 months. I was watching her dashboard score climb. I was watching her time sections climb. Her practice tests wouldn't move. We go 3 weeks without tutoring. She got a 157 in May. It was like May 14th. On June 9th, she scored a 180 on a practice test. And she said, she calls me, or it was April to May, whatever it was. We got on a call, gonna do tutoring. She shows me her dashboard. I couldn't believe it. I mean, 178, 179, 180, like just
Yeah.
killing it. And I said, what happened? And she's like, I realized that as soon as I got into a practice test, I wasn't implementing anything that I'd been working on. I wasn't making predictions. I wasn't slowing down. I wasn't engaging with the passage. I was just panicking and I was trying to hurry and I was thinking about the clock and something about practice tests. She could not, for so long, really convert that practice into doing the exact same thing on a practice test as she did on drilling. And as soon as she did, as soon as the clock went out of her mind, as soon as the practice test score went out of her mind, and she really did everything the exact same that she'd been practicing when she was
Yeah.
drilling, skyrocketed.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a growth versus fixed mindset issue where Paige is doing so well on her practice sections because she said, I tend to focus on drilling and timed sections with an emphasis on review. That's necessarily a growth mindset. Paige is doing those timed sections with an eye toward, okay, after the section's over, I'm going to learn from my mistakes. I bet that Paige is treating her practice tests, the time tests, full tests, with more of a fixed mindset where she's just like trying to get a score.
Mhm.
And that score is going to determine her worth. And she's not she's no longer doing it like it's a practice test. This is why sometimes people fuck up on their official tests even though they can do fine on their practice tests. It's because they treat their practice tests like practice tests, but then they treat their official test as if it's a measure of their worth.
Mhm.
And so I don't know. I guess I would love to hear back from Paige. Again, just email us back, Paige, the same way you got in touch with us in the first place, lsatdemon.com probably, and let us know if that resonates with you at all. But it feels to me like I know for sure you're doing something different on your full tests than you are on your practice sections. It's really the only way this makes sense at all.
the the one other thing, what's your timing like? Are you not finishing a time section, leaving one or two unanswered, and you're finishing your practice test with time?
Yeah,
That
right. She's like
right?
rushing on the official test, or the opposite of that, which is that she just casually, does like maybe she finishes the section and misses 1 to 3. That's fine. I mean, I'd probably prefer that you just randomly guess on two at the end and get them
Eh,
all right
get them
on the
all right
way
up to then. Yeah.
up to that. But, fine. Like if you're missing 1 to 3 in a section, I can't really be too mad about that. But maybe then when you do a full test, because you see it as a measure of your worth, you might be crippling yourself, slowing down, like super
Rereading.
slowing down, triple checking wrong
Yeah.
answers because it's, oh no, this is the one that really matters.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know. Stop
Yeah.
doing that. and write us back, Paige, and let us know how it goes.
Next item comes from Gavin. He's asking about comparative RC.
Hey guys, I've been working with the demon for nearly 2 months now, and I'm happy with the direction my study is moving. On reading comp, I'm getting around 3 passages flawless. Nice. But one place I am consistently struggling is with comparative passages. That's those passages with there's passage A and passage B. It's like 2 shorter passages instead of one long passage. We call that comparative reading on the LSAT. Do you have any advice for how to keep the arguments separate, especially in cases where the passages agree on most things but not all? By the time I'm through with B, I feel the need to return to A. Oh, wow. But I feel like I'm wasting time. Sincerely, Gavin. I do have thoughts, but you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Uh, I love comparative passages in RC. Um, because to me, some of the work that I do on every RC passage becomes very explicitly clear with comparative passages. What I mean by that, there's two things that I like to do, and if you attend my RC prediction fundamental classes on Wednesday nights, you'll see what I do here. The first thing is you have to be synthesizing information across paragraphs, and in this case, across passages. The second I'm reading and I start reading passage B, if I read the first sentence and it's something that is opposed to passage A, in line with passage A, whatever, I read it, I understand it, and I go, passage A wouldn't have liked that very much.
Yeah.
And then I go on to my next point and I keep reading. And when I see another thing, I go, oh, that's passage A talked about this. They agree with all passage B on
Yep.
this. And then I keep going and then I go, oh, whoa, they use the same evidence. They're talking about the same thing, but passage B gives a completely different conclusion. And I'm
Yep.
synthesizing that information. And Gavin, to this point, I don't just do this on comparative either, right? Oh, whoa, this is a deviation from what paragraph one was talking about.
Or speaker A,
Or
even
the
within
critics.
one long, that happens
Yeah.
all the time, right?
Yeah.
Critics say and proponents say, oh, okay, well, they
Yeah.
disagree on, oh, or even critics say and proponents say, but they might agree
Mhm.
on a certain thing. But you notice that as you go.
Right.
Go ahead. Go
Right.
ahead, Josh.
Yeah. So just stopping and engaging that information across passages while you're reading reduces that need for you to return to passage A,
Yep.
and it gives you a better understanding of passage B.
Yep.
Second piece of advice. I when I finish a passage, and with comparative both passage A and passage B, I stop for just 2 seconds, 10 seconds maybe, and I ask myself questions like, what do I think this author is like does for a profession? Where was this
Hmm.
article published? What argument are they trying to make? And I just stopped to ask myself some big picture questions. I'm not married to it. It's not something I have to rely on, but giving myself 10 seconds to stop and check for that big picture, right? If one passage that is one that I love to use when I'm teaching is about fingerprinting evidence,
Hmm.
and the first paragraph or first passage finishes, I stop and ask myself, what is this? And it's like, oh, this is coming from an appellate court, right? This is a court's opinion. And then I get to the second part, I'm like, oh, well, this is an expert, right? And by keeping those two things in my head, just coming up with an idea of who I think this author is and what they care about and why they're bothering me with this information just helps me keep them separate in my head. Oh yeah, this came from the trial court, and kind of gives me something to lean on. I do that though on regular passages too, where I just 10 seconds to think about those big picture. I find they really help with questions like main point, purpose, tone, all the
Yeah.
above.
Yeah. Yeah. My advice to Gavin would be basically the same. I mean, to say it in a different way, we learn about compare and contrast in what, fifth grade, sixth grade,
Yeah.
like really just elementary school. Compare and contrast. Well, okay. So you read passage A like you would read any reading comprehension passage. But when you read passage B, you need to be actively comparing and contrasting as you go. And you can do it on a pretty simple level. Josh said, oh, passage A wouldn't like this. Yeah. Well, okay. That's a thing that they disagree on, right? So it's weird actually that Gavin is having a hard time keeping their arguments separate. It sounds to me like he's just reading them as if they're just one long passage. He's not taking any
Mhm.
time to think about it. And especially, I think, Gavin, you're not doing it right when you're reading passage B. If you're not noticing the places where they disagree while you're reading passage B, then you got a problem. Like, I think he's just trying to comprehend passage A, then he's trying to comprehend passage B, but you should be trying to comprehend passage B in light of what passage A said. So frequently there's going to be points of agreement, and you need to note that, like, oh yeah, passage A mentioned that as well. But there will be points of disagreement, or they might agree, but for different reasons, or they might agree on the evidence, but they might disagree on the conclusions that you could draw from that evidence. But this should be popping out at you as you're reading passage B. You should be more actively reading passage B to look for the places where they are similar and the places where they are different. And then, yeah, you certainly don't want to read passage A, passage B, and then feel like you have to go back and read passage A again.
Right.
It you should grasp what's there in passage A. I'm not saying memorize it, but what's their main idea and why do they think the thing they think? How did they develop their argument? Like, what's going on in passage A? And then in passage B, all right, well, what's similar, but also what's different as you're reading? Then hopefully you won't have to feel that need to reread passage A.
Here's the other thing. Uh, if Gavin's reading this way, his way, maybe without that engagement for all types of passages, if he were to change that and read in this like engagement way, oh well, the critics have already addressed this. Critics don't like this, so this is the author's opinion. Oh, I don't know who's speaking here. Like, I don't know if the author agrees at this point. That engagement, synthesizing it across the passage as you go, I think that there's a strong chance that it will well, I know it will. I know that it will reduce the amount of times Gavin has to go back to the passage. It's going to reduce the amount of time that he spends in the questions. And Gavin, you might, by just spending a little bit more time in the passage, find that you're now able to make it to the fourth passage still flawless on the first three because you're just reading better, and
Yeah.
it's just the questions don't take you as long anymore.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Gavin, for writing in. Hopefully that was helpful. Last item on our agenda is the word of the week, specious. This is coming to us from Demon student Shayla, um, adapted from a real LSAT. We have a quote here that says, "The difference between literary and genre fiction is a specious distinction." Josh, do you know offhand what the word specious means?
well, when I put together the agenda, I learned what the word specious means. So I might let you give it a guess first if you want, and see if you
Sure.
knew offhand.
Uh-huh. A specious distinction is a distinction without a difference. I mean, in context here, I'm noticing that in context, they have scare quotes around literary and genre fiction.
Mhm.
So if you come in and you tell me the difference between literary, so-called literary fiction and so-called genre fiction is a specious distinction, then I know that you think that it's not actually an important difference. You might think that they're identical, or you might think, ah, it's semantics. Nominally, there might be some trivial difference. I think trivial would be probably a
Mm,
pretty good synonym for specious. What's the
okay.
definition say?
Definition from Cambridge says seeming to be right or true, but really wrong or false.
Huh. Second
So,
definition?
I was scrolling and I don't see a second one on here.
Interesting.
But it's interesting because a specious distinction is the example that they use here,
Hmm.
or they say then his whole argument was specious, and
Yeah.
it's interesting because the context, a specious distinction does make sense with the idea of a distinction without a difference,
Yeah.
meaning, right, a distinction isn't really there.
Yeah.
But it says later, then like for an example of the use, you claim that trade with low wage countries is unfair in and of itself, and in and of itself is both economically specious and morally bankrupt. So this idea that it seems economically uh like good, but is really wrong or false in its distinction.
Hmm.
So
I think I can give an example of a specious distinction, or at least it's a mostly specious distinction uh, as it pertains to LSAT logical reasoning question types.
okay.
Okay. So a question that says basically the difference between must be true and supported to me
Hmm.
is a mostly specious distinction where technically, sure, a must be true question says which one of the following must be true if the passage above is true. Technically, they're asking you for something that is literally proven by the facts. On a supported question, they say which one of the following is most strongly supported by the information above. Yeah, we label them as two different question types in the daemon. But when I wrote my first book about logical reasoning, the Logical Reasoning Encyclopedia, I didn't even bother having a separate section for supported or so called soft must be trues because your method of doing those two types of questions is basically the same. You're just looking for the one that's proven by the facts, right? And you're just going to pick the one that is the closest to proven by the facts. So if you find if you're doing a supported question or a soft must be true question, it didn't say which one must be true. It said which one is most strongly supported by. Yeah. If I find one that must be true, that's the answer. And if I don't find one that is strictly must be true, I'm just going to pick the one that's closest to must be true. So if I was forced to teach logical reasoning forever with just one category there instead of two, if I was like, oh yeah, must be true and supported, it's the same thing.
Hmm.
I think you could probably do it because it's essentially a specious distinction where it's like, yeah, it might be technically correct, but in the majority of practical applications, it really doesn't matter.
Yep.
The instructions at the top of the section told you to pick the best answer. So even on a must be true, if you see an answer that you don't think is strictly proven to be true by those facts, well, what else are you going to pick? Because if you didn't find one of the other five that is strictly proven by those facts, then you better pick the one that is closest to, right? The one that is
Right.
most strongly supported by those facts. Does that make sense to you? That
It makes
that the
oh
difference
I
between must be true and supported is maybe at least in that light, a specious distinction?
I think it's a great example. I think any of the questions on RC, if you're trying to make delineations between them as types,
Oh yeah. Oh, totally.
inference.
Oh, perfect. How about author's attitude versus author's primary purpose versus main point? All
Yeah.
of those, I think, are a specious distinction.
Yeah.
Like you could get into exactly what type of question of oh no, they're well, look, their primary purpose is to prove their main point, and their attitude is they have a primary purpose of trying to prove their main point. So, yeah, I agree with you. Like on reading comp, they're all just must be trues.
I will oftentimes one of the best examples actually going back to the comparative passage. I remember there was a question that said author A would be most likely to respond to this point made by author B in which of the following ways. Have a volunteer come up or virtually come up to do the question, and I stop them before they start and I say, "What
Yeah.
kind of question is this?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I, I don't know." And I said, "Trick question. It's the same answer that it always is. It's a must be true." And
It's a must
they're
be true. It's reading comprehension. Yeah.
and it's like you have to go pick. I was like, what would author say? Well, author A gave 3 points. It's one of those three.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was one of the things that author A already said. If you do not make distinctions between RC questions, they are, unless it explicitly says strengthen or weakener, must be true, must be true, must be true.
I'll give one last example of a specious distinction. You're looking at the US News and World Report rankings for law schools, and you see a school that's ranked 70th, and you're trying to compare it to a school that's ranked 95th. That is beyond a specious distinction. There is no difference between a school that's ranked 75th and a school that's ranked, or 70th and a school that's ranked 95th. It just doesn't matter at that level. It doesn't matter. And I could say the same thing for a school that's ranked 40th versus 60th, or a school that's ranked 30th versus 40th. It's just these distinctions don't matter nearly as much. A school that's ranked 14th versus 15th. I mean, the fact
14th
that there
versus
are now
18th
17 schools in the top
should tell you.
14 should indicate that there's not a big difference between schools that are ranked 14th and 15th. These are specious distinctions. Of course, the schools that are currently ranked 14th are going to make a big deal out of it. And the schools that are currently ranked 15th are going to tell you how specious that distinction is. But yeah, thank you, Shayla. If you want to catch up on all our words of the week, you just go to lsat.link/wow. There's 100 something of them there. You could be LSAT famous by asking questions or sharing news with us on our website, thinkinglsat.com, or on the socials at LSATdemon. If you have questions about the LSAT Demon, email help@lsatdemon.com. Check out our other podcast, LSAT Demon Daily. That was episode 516 of the Thinking LSAT podcast. Thanks all y'all for listening. Nice knowing you. Don't pay for law school.